In the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. And when you hear the word from God, it will make you know who I am, who one is. That is, make you realize your true status, your true divine status. Now we are going through the Gospel of Mark, and we are on to chapter 6, line number 31. And he said unto them, so Jesus told his disciples who had earlier gone out into the countryside of Judea and in the mountains too, and gone about in the villages teaching. And then having returned back, they explained to Jesus, they told him all what they had done and said. And Jesus told them, he said unto them, come you yourselves apart into a desert place and rest a while. So that being the case, all of you come apart from the crowd, separate from the crowd, into a desert place, into a quiet place where there is nobody, and rest a while, because after your journeys of ministering, you're tired and you need a little rest, time to rest a while. That's always the case. Before any venture is to take place, you prepare yourself by resting. So also after your operation is over, any operation is over, once again you rest a while and gather your spirit or your forces within you. So here too also Jesus told them, rest a while. Now let's rest a little. For there were many comings and goings. For there were many people who were constantly coming in and going out. So when people come and meet you at all times from different parts of Judea, of course, Jesus and his disciples are bound to get tired, as there were so many people and they had no leisure. So these people, Jesus and his disciples, 12 disciples, did not have any leisure at all, because people came from afar, from a distance. So they couldn't turn them away. They had to receive them, meet them, teach them. And as a result of all this, they had no leisure even to eat, so much as to eat even. They had no time even to eat. So Jesus told them, let us go into a quiet place where we can relax. And in line 32, it is said, they departed into a desert place by ship privately. And very quietly, they boarded a little boat, which is called a ship here, a boat, and went to a quiet place, to another part. And the people saw them departing, but the people around, they saw them departing. And many knew him. They knew about him. They had heard all about him. And therefore, they, like children, going after the piper. When a piper comes into town, all the children run after him to hear his piping. So here also, all these people were running after Jesus wherever he was, in order to see him and to hear his sermons, his teachings. So, and they ran afoot hither and out of all cities, from all nearby cities and towns and villages. They all went up to him, went up to him wherever he went. And out went them, and they all went there and came together unto him. And even though he tried to get away from them, but he could not pass. People followed him on land by the sea coast and came together unto him. So they all, when they docked in the next point, they were there waiting for him. Waiting for him. They came together unto him. And Jesus, line number 34, when he came out, saw many people, much people, and was moved with compassion towards them. So when he saw all those people eagerly waiting to receive him and to hear him, he was moved with compassion towards them. Because the reason was because they were as sheep, not having a shepherd, like a sheep, like a flock of sheep, which is left destitute without a shepherd taking care of them. So also all these people were like sheep indeed, without anyone to take care and protect them, not having a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. He began to teach them many things. Now, herein, we will refer to John, the Gospel of John, line number 10, wherein John has got something interesting to tell us. So John says, in the Gospel of John it is said, wherein Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. That's a very famous phrase. I am the good shepherd. And a good shepherd tends and takes care of his flock. Whatever be his flock, he takes care of his flock. And in taking care of the flock, so we'll read that section because it is very intriguingly said. Verily, verily, I say unto you, he that entereth not by the door into the sheepfold, but climbeth up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he that enter in by the door is a shepherd of the sheep. So, the shepherd shepherds his flock and enables the sheep to enter in and to go out of the pen. See, he opens the door. He opens the door, the gate, for his own sheep. And the porter openeth. Porter is the one, the gatekeeper. He openeth the gate. So here the word porter stands for the shepherd who opens the gate, the gatekeeper. The gatekeeper, the shepherd, he opens the gate. And how does he open? The sheep hear his voice. So when he wants to bring them into his pen, the sheep hear his voice. So to him the porter openeth, and the sheep hear his voice. And he calleth his own sheep. He calleth his own sheep by name and leadeth them out. He leadeth them out into green pastures. And when he goes out along with his flock, he goeth before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. And so the good Lord is the shepherd who shepherds every person in his lifetime and leads him into green pastures for his experiences in the world outside. By that process, the person gets nourished mentally, emotionally, spiritually nourished. And then every day he brings the flock back. He brings the flock back into the pen. So as he brings the flock back into the pen, he calls them. And the sheep hear his voice, for they know his voice. And the shepherd knows each individual sheep. So accordingly, he calls them. He calls them in. So also that is why I said, when you hear the word of God, it will make you God. So when you have to enter the pen, the divine pen, at that time, you have to be at the gate of the pen. So Jesus says, very few find the gate. Very few people find the gate in the world and stand at the gate so that they can hear the word of God, the word from God, which will enable them to enter in. And therefore, the good Lord is the good shepherd who shepherds every person. And therefore, Jesus, with compassion, he was teaching the people many things. And then he says in this Gospel of John itself, and other sheep I have, which are not of this fold. There are many other sheep too, which don't belong to this fold. But nevertheless, them also I must bring back, and they shall hear my voice, and there shall be one fold and one shepherd. So the entire human race has to become one fold, having one shepherd. The one shepherd is the good Lord. And they have come to the people in the human race has to come to realize that God is their good shepherd who shepherds them into the pen, into their divine pen, into their divine status. And in order to do that, God will so see to it that he has to bring the entire humanity into one pen, into one pen. There are no differences there. There is no such thing called the Hindu system, the Buddhist system, the Christian system. All that will have to disappear. And there will be only one pen into one fold. That's what he says. I must bring all of them into one fold. And they shall hear my voice. The one and the same voice, which will enable them to enter the kingdom of heaven within. So therefore, he says that he had enormous compassion for them, and he began to teach them many things. Many things he began to teach them. And what he taught was all based on universal principles, universal truths. So when a person comes to understand the universal truths contained in the religious system, he bypasses and surpasses and goes beyond conventional religion, goes beyond the practice of conventional religion, which becomes non-relevant or irrelevant for your salvation. And that is what he implies here, that the entire sheepfold has to become one fold. The entire sheep has to become one fold, which is the true religion of the human race. So therefore, in order to bring this about, he shepherds them. He shepherds them, teaches them the same truths. There is no such thing called the Christian truth, the Hindu truth, or the Buddhist truth, or any other truth. The truth is universal. It's a universal truth. The discipline is universal discipline, meant for the one and the same, for every member of the human race. So thus, in this manner, he began teaching them. No wonder when he began teaching like this, the people, the priests were offended, as they usually are, because they will be put out of business, out of commission. And so therefore, until people arrive at this proper understanding, they will not be at the doorstep or enter the gate, the mystical gate. So in order to arrive at the mystical gate, they will have to surpass and bypass all conventional forms of religious conditionings which they have been subject to hitherto in all their lives. Then, having taught them, now we come to a very interesting section wherein Jesus begins to feed a multitude of people, wherein he feeds 5,000 people who had gathered there. The people who had gathered there were about 5,000 in number, and he's going to feed them. And that section is being opened out here. And when the day was now far spent, his disciples came unto him and said, "This is a desert place, and now the time is far past." So the disciples, it was evening time, the evening time had come, and this is a desert place wherein no food is available, and the time is fast, it's evening time, the time is far past. Therefore, kindly send them away. The disciples told Jesus, "Send them away, that they may go into the country round about and into the villages and buy themselves bread." So kindly send them out so that they can go to the nearby villages and towns and obtain their food, buy themselves bread, for they have nothing to eat. And Jesus answered, gave a very remarkable answer. He answered and said unto them, "Give you them to eat, give something for them to eat." But now, when there are 5,000 people gathered, and you tell them, "Give something to eat," give them something to eat. And they said unto him, "Shall we go and buy 200 penny worth of bread and give them to eat? How can we? We have to feed this multitude, we need 200 penny worth of bread, which is 8 months' wages of a man. Huh? And how can we do that? Give them to eat? Are we to do that? How can we do that?" And he said unto them, "How many loaves have you? Don't worry about it. How many loaves have you? Go and see." Because they had a little bread with them for their own personal use. So he asked them, "How many loaves have you? Go and see." And when they knew, then they went in and saw, and they found that there were 5 small loaves of bread and 2 fishes. And he commanded them to make all sit by companies upon the green grass. And then he commanded them, then he told the multitude gathered there, "Sit in groups on the green pasture, on the pastures, upon the green grass, sit down, all of you, in groups." And they sat down in ranks by hundreds and by 50s. So they sat down in groups of 50s and hundreds. So groups of 50s and hundreds, they sat down. And then when he had taken the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, so Jesus then at that time, after the people had sat down in 50s and hundreds in various groups, he took 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. He looked up to heaven. Jesus looked up to the heavens and blessed the food, blessed and break the loaves. He blessed and broke the loaves into pieces and gave them to his disciples to set before them. He broke the bread which was there and asked him to set before the people around 5,000 people. So he broke the 5 loaves of bread and into pieces, and told them to set it in front of all the people, to put it in their plates, to set it in, not their plates, into their hands. There were no plates to. Gave them to his disciples to set before them. And also the 2 fishes, he divided amongst them, and the 2 fishes too. He divided them and gave it to his disciples, and they went and gave it to the multitude seated in front. And what happened? The 5 loaves and the 2 fishes got multiplied, became sufficient for the multitude to eat spontaneously. So the people had their stomach full. The 5,000 people gathered there. So they did all eat and were filled, and to their heart's content, or the stomachs filled, to the full of their stomach, they ate. So this is a miracle which Jesus had performed, of feeding 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fishes. And then thereafter, his disciples, they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments and other fishes. And after all the people had eaten, the fragments were there, little crumbs. Crumbs were there. And the crumbs itself became 12 baskets full of the fragments and of the fishes too. And they that did eat of the loaves were about 5,000 men. And those who ate were about 5,000 men. So that means what? There could have been an equal number of women too, and women and children too. So about 5,000 men, or it could be only, so when you say men, it could also include the women too. So it is, whatever it is 5,000 men. Now I must, with respect to this, now this is a miracle done by Jesus, often expressed, stated in the world. For at another instance too, he had also fed 4,000 people in a similar way. Now, people very much wonder, how is it possible that such a situation wherein he can make 5 bread and 2 fishes into thousands, and give them to the people to eat. It is very much possible. Once again, I'm going to relate to you an anecdote which happened in Jaffna in Sri Lanka about 70 to 80 years ago. There was a holy man by the name of Yoga Swami who duplicated and performed many of those miracles which were also attributed to Jesus. And on one instance, this yogi, who was a man of God, a saint, a holy man, who used to live in a hut, in a grass hut. I had visited that hut when I was long ago and met him too. Now, on one occasion, a busload of people arrived in Jaffna from the city of Colombo, which was about 250 miles away. And then thereafter, it was noontime. And then what happened? People had traveled about 5 to 6 hours by bus. And it was noontime, time for meals, time for food. And then what happened? People were hungry, of course, having traveled 6 hours, but soon after, they came to have his audience, this holy man's audience, all the way. Then soon after, a vehicle appeared, a small truck, a very small truck, mini truck appeared. And the driver got down and he told the people there, well, this truck has come from Kandy, which was 200 miles away, came from Kandy. And it was, and in the truck there was rice, lentils, and vegetables meant for the people, for the 50 people there. It came in a truck, in a small truck. So the people were very happy about it. And they prepared their meals and ate. Later on, and they presumed that this truck may have come from the devotee of the saint from the area of Kandy, which is 200 miles away. Later on, when the people asked those people in Kandy, who sent it? Did you send it? And they said, no, we never sent anything. We never sent anything. So what had happened here was the saint of Jaffna, the holy man Yoga Swami, he had materialized a truck with a driver and with food contents in it and fed the people who had come to see him. He had fed them. And no one knew what had really happened and how these things happened. They did not know. But the fact is that it did happen. They had their stomach full of food later. So this is how this miracle of Jesus is not something which is, we will use the word for a Messiah to accomplish. It's nothing. It's very simple. He being what he is, he could of course materialize that at any time from anywhere and bring it forth indeed. By a mere wish, they can bring it out. So this is exactly what happened, wherein with 5 loaves and 2 fishes, he did feed the 5,000 assembled people. Then thereafter, straight away he constrained his disciples to get into the ship and to go to the other side before unto Bethsaida. There was a place called Bethsaida. While he sent away the people, who had assembled there after the food, sent them away, and he and his disciples, they went to Bethsaida. And when he had sent them away, he departed into a mountain to pray. And having got there to Bethsaida, he had in the meantime sent the people, and also he sent his own disciples. He departed into a mountain to pray. He left the place and told his disciples to go away, and then he went into a mountain to pray. After every such situation, we find that Jesus did pray. The implication is that everyone should pray to God after an eventful situation and to give thanks to God for what has transpired. So before the human race wishes to get something from God, you look up to God. So that is why Jesus also, before he broke the bread, he looked up to the heavens. And after that, he fed the people. Then after it was over, then thereafter once again, he went into the mountains to pray as thanksgiving. It's an example also to mankind that before and after, we should all learn to pray for that. Be thankful to God for what he had commissioned and given us, for whatever he has provided us with. So this is an example to be followed by the human race, before and after. an unusual incident for which the human race wants. Then what happened? He departed into the mountain to pray, because there were mountains there, and mountains are a very good place to pray because it's always very quiet in the mountains. And when evening was come, and the evening time came, and the ship was in the midst of the sea, and the disciples had got boarded the ship, and they had gone to the middle of the sea, in the midst of the sea, and he alone on the land. And he alone was on the land. And he saw them from the land. He saw them toiling in rowing. And he saw his disciples trying to row the ship. He saw them toiling in rowing. For the wind was contrary unto them, for there was a strong wind which was blowing against them. And with all effort and vigor, they were trying to row the boat to get across. And about the fourth watch of the night, he cometh unto them. And the fourth watch of the night means that it is after 3 a.m. in the morning, the fourth watch. Having prayed, he came unto them walking upon the sea. He came walking upon the sea. So these people were in the boat trying to row and were trying to get across to the other shore. And here cometh Jesus after his prayers, and he was walking on the sea. Now that's another miracle, to walk on water. He was walking upon the sea and would have passed by them, and he would have passed by them. But when they saw him walking, now we will get to the NIV version, which is a little better in its expression. So now, when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on land. And he saw the disciples straining at the oars, because the wind was against them. About the fourth watch of the night, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them. But when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. But the disciples, when they saw him walking by, they thought he was a spirit, he was a ghost. They cried out. They were in fear. Out of fear, they cried out, because they all saw him and were terrified. They saw him walking on the water and they were terrified. They thought that he was a spirit, a ghost. Immediately he spoke to them, but Jesus, he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, don't be afraid. It is I, it is I. It is I who am. It's I, Jesus, it's I who am. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." That's what he said. It is I, don't be afraid. Then he climbed into the boat with them, and And the moment he entered into the boat, the wind died down. The wind which was blowing in a big gale, it died down. They were completely amazed. They were amazed at what had happened. For here he was walking on the water, on the sea, and then after one moment he got onto the boat. The wind too subsided totally. It became totally quiet. So that amazed them. For they had not understood about the loaves. For they had not understood the significance of the loaves. That Jesus could do many things. As the Messiah, he had the capacity to do many things. To regulate nature. To command nature, to overpower nature. And he also had the capacity to materialize out of nowhere, seemingly nowhere, loaves of bread. So these things, they were incomprehensible even to his own disciples, what to speak of the multitude of people around. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves, for they couldn't understand the significance of the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. The people still, their hearts had not totally understood the majesty and the glory of the presence of Jesus in their midst. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and anchored there. So into another place, they anchored there. And as soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout that whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. So the moment they saw him, they took people on the mats. They carried sick people on mats. Or on little cots, on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went into villages, towns, and countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplace. They placed the sick in front of him in the marketplaces too, in the open area. They begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak. Even that they begged him that perhaps they could even touch the cloak, touch his cloak, so that cloak, his dress, so that they could be cured. And all who touched him were healed. And all those who touched the sick people were healed. Some were healed physically, some were healed emotionally, some were healed psychologically. All forms of healing were taking place, because the human race requires healing on all 3 levels, or 4 levels rather. People have to be healed physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. So therefore, all those people with their own problems, when they touched him, they got healed. Then thereafter, we come to another section, wherein in chapter 7, now we come to chapter 7, and another interesting thing happens in Jesus' life. Then at that time, when he was there, then came together unto him the Pharisees and certain of the Scribes, which came from Jerusalem. Then from the city of Jerusalem, the Pharisees and the Scribes. The Scribes are those who are conversant with the scriptures and who write it down. And the Pharisees were the lay priest, and they came all the way from Jerusalem. And when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is to say, with unwashed hands, they found fault. So when they came there, they saw the disciples of Jesus not eating food in a ceremonial manner, because the Jews at that time, so when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is, they just wash, you just wash your hands and then you eat food, and bread with defiled. But the Jews ate their food in a very ceremonial manner. Let's say so from their point of view, this way of eating was said to be unclean, because it is not properly washed. The hands are not ceremoniously washed. It's a very funny thing. Even today, in certain parts of the world, people begin to eat their food in a very ceremonial manner. If they partake of that food in such a manner indeed. It's a big show. It's a ceremonial form of eating. It's more a show to see for the others to observe and see. So, and these Pharisees and Scribes took offense at the disciples of Jesus who just superficially washed their fingers and began eating their bread. So they considered it to be with unwashed hands, they found fault. So they found fault with it. For the Pharisees and all the Jews, except they wash their hands often, they wash their hands often in a ceremonial manner and do not eat holding on to the tradition of the elders. So they would follow the tradition of the elders. They are elders because it was ritualistic eating. You may call it ritualistic eating food. Even today, in many parts of the religious community, you find this ritualistic eating food taking place. So unless you go through this process of ritualistic eating, people do not consider that this food has been eaten with clean hands. So, and they hold on to the tradition of the elders. So they hold on to the tradition which has been passed down from the elders. And the Jews too, when they come from the market, except they washed, they eat not. And of course, when the Jews come from the marketplace or from outside, before they eat, they ceremoniously wash themselves and then eat. And many things there be, and many other things they do that. Similar things too. Such as washing of the cups and the pots too, even the washing of the pots and the plates and all the cooking utensils too. They similarly do that, and also of the table too. They make a lot of paraphernalia about it, religious, this thing, which is a show of things. Then the Pharisees and Scribes asked him, "Why walk not thy disciples according to the tradition of the elders?" Why is it that your disciples do not follow the tradition of the elders in their mannerisms and ways? Because according to tradition of the elders, the forefathers, the ancestors, the people bygone, they had laid down some conventions and rules by which people begin to operate in life. So they asked him this question: why do your disciples do not follow the conventions or traditions laid down for centuries by the elders, but eat bread with unwashed hands? But your disciples eat bread with unwashed hands. That is not as a ritualistic process. Washing their hands in a ritualistic manner. They don't do that. They just wash it. Hygienically, they may have washed it and eaten food. And he answered and said unto them, Jesus answered to this and said unto them, well hath Isaiah prophesied of you hypocrites. Isaiah, the prophet, has prophesied about your hypocrisy. You hypocrites, as it is written, these people honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. And what was that? Of course, these people honoreth me with their lips. With their lips is just a mere verbal saying, but their hearts are far from me, but their heart is not in me. They may mumble something, as it is even done today. A lot of mumbling is going on in ritualistic eating, which means nothing. But the heart is not there. It's not in God. The heart is not in God. It's just a show. It's just a show operation. So these people honoreth me with their lips, and they sing hymns. They sing songs and hymns before they eat their food, and make circular movements around the food. So they honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. Howbeit in vain do they worship me. In vain do they make a show of worshipping me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. Now this is where the point is. Teaching the humanity, teaching mankind around them teaching for doctrines, the commandments of men. So instead of teaching them the doctrines and the doctrines of spirit of life or commandments of life taught by God, they teach them the commandments of men, which has been promulgated by man. So man, mortal man in every tradition, especially the priest, the priestly community, the world over, they open out certain rules and regulations which are of their own making. It is of their own making. It has got nothing to do. You may call it the rituals which are found in churches, in synagogues, in temples. Various forms of rituals are gone through as a big show indeed. And mumbling with their lips. They mumble with their lips too and sing so-called hymns of praise. But their heart is not in them, in me. Their heart is not in me. It's a show. It's a big show indeed. That is why the true hermits never make a show of anything. When food is placed in front of them, they just sit down and eat the food. They don't make any show out of it. They just take it and eat it. That's all. True hermits. But the others make a big show out of it. Even today it's the case. It's still the case today. So they mumble with their so ritualistic eating, ritualistic other activities. So therefore he says, their heart is far from me, and they live by the commandments laid down by men. That's a very significant statement. The conventions and the traditions that the human race is following in every society, in all religious traditions, these conventions and regulations are formulated by man, by man. They are not the commandments of God. And the commandments of God are totally different. So they bypass the commandments of God and conveniently create a make-believe practice, And therefore he says, instead of teaching the doctrines of the commandments promulgated by God, they follow up the conventions and rules and regulations of men. For laying aside the commandments of God, you hold the tradition of men. So that's what he says. In line number 8, having laid aside the commandments of God. Now, what are the commandments of God? It's a question which could be asked. Of course, it's very simple. Speak the truth. Be kind. Be compassionate. Share what you have. Don't make a big fuss about it. Don't steal. Don't fabricate. Don't tell lies. These are the natural, simple laws. These are the commandments of God. You may call it the moral commandments. You may call it the 10 commandments. You may call it the 22 commandments, or the 10, actually it's more than 10, it's 22, 24 commandments, which are the rules of life. And these commandments of God, the rules of life, have been conveniently bypassed. And instead, the human race has been led or misled into the practice of rituals, temple rituals, church rituals. And these people consider this as something holy. Not in the least. Not in the least. It's totally non-relevant or irrelevant It's totally irrelevant. So that is what he is trying to point here, Jesus. Seeing all this, for laying aside the commandments of God, you hold the tradition of men. So these are the tradition of men, as the washing of pots and cups and the heating of food, and many other such like things you do. And he said unto them, full well you reject the commandments of God, that you may keep your own tradition. You have rejected the commandments of God, so that you can keep your own tradition in whichever part of the world that you are. The cultural tradition which is out in whichever part of the world that you live, there is a tradition which goes on. And you're supposed to follow the convention and the traditions of the place. Bypassing and overlooking the true commandments of God, which are universal in character. Then he says, for Moses said, honor thy father and thy mother. There are two things that Moses said. Because Moses was a prophet. And God spoke via Moses. That's why. So Moses said, honor thy father and thy mother. Your father and mother are to be honored. You've got to be respectful towards them. Because as a helpless little baby, they brought you up in spite of the fact that you are an impossible case. You know very well the amount of sacrifice that a mother and a father make in bringing up a little newborn baby into the world and foster and care for it over its formative years. The amount of sacrifice they make, all done out of love, parental love, which is the main factor which makes them go through the process of nourishing, taking care of the little baby. In fact, of all the species in the world, the human baby is the most helpless. All other species can sort of survive, can survive in some form or the other. But a little newborn baby cannot survive on its own unless it is cared for. So it's the only help. So the helpless little baby requires careful care over its initial period. And the mother and the father, they do it. The father goes out to work to get the necessary provisions so that they can nourish the family, and the mother too. So therefore, they have to be honored. Every mother and father who is a mother and a father have to be honored. They have to be respected, graciously looked upon, and one should never utter a hard or a cruel word towards them. An injuring word one should never utter unto your father or mother. So that is why honor thy father and thy mother. No matter who they are and what they are, they deserve your maximum respect. Reverence is only for God, but respect and regard is for your parents. And there's another reason. Therefore, he says, whosoever curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But if a man, any man, if he were to curse his father or mother, that is to say, if he were to say something nasty and bad towards his father or mother, then that is a great sin indeed. That is a great sin. So they have let him die the death. So this person doesn't even deserve to live. He's an ungrateful wretch. He's an ungrateful person for having been mentally cruel and unkind to the parents who brought him up with great deal of effort and vigor. So we have to respect that. We have to understand and appreciate what they have done. Even if the parents had only the capacity to give you one meal a day, one must be thankful for it. Even if they were capable of only giving you one coat, one dress, one must be graciously thankful for it. They may not be able to provide you with many things. It is not they who have provided you. God has provided to you via them. It is God who has provided. So why don't you? What can they do? So why don't you at this point look up to God and say, hey, why have you done this? Instead of your parents, they can only give you what God has provided for you. Via them. It comes to you via them. All the resources that you have comes via your parents, from God, via your parents. This is all that you are eligible for in life, for whatever reason. Some people get a little, some people get a little more. So therefore, Jesus says, do not curse and utter anything injurious, mentally utter cruel words, or entertain cruel and harsh emotions towards your parents, towards your father or mother. It is a grievous sin indeed. But then what do you say? What do you do? But you say, if a man shall say to his father or mother, it is korban, that is to say, a gift to God, gift by whatsoever thou mightest be purified by me, mightest be profited by me, he shall be free. But if you consider and feel that your parents in old age, when they have become old, if you say that it is korban, that's a term which is used in the Jewish culture, korban, that is a gift. Whatever they get from you is only a gift. Just like giving a gift to God, it's only a gift. It's not a daily need. Of course, you give a gift now and then to God. But as far as your parents are concerned, it's not a gift. It is a duty. There's a difference. It's a daily duty. To nourish and look after and take care of them is a duty of every man and woman. So, therefore, consider it is not a korban, not a gift that what you do occasionally on a birthday or on a Christmas day, give them a little gift. That's not like that. But it's a daily duty. It's a duty to care and foster for them just as much as your parents cared and fostered you when you were a helpless little baby. Similarly also, when your parents have become old and when they have become weak and incapable physically and monetarily, it is a duty on the part of the children to take care of them to the best of their ability, physically, financially, and also financially, to take care of them. And if it is because they looked after you when you were small, now it is your turn to look after them when they are old. It's a karmic debt. And if you do not fulfill this karmic debt, it is a great error and a sin. So, but what do people do? They conveniently push aside their aged parents. They did that then, and even today they are doing it today, the human race. No, it should not be the case. So therefore, you don't want to take the trouble and you suffer him no more to do aught for his father or his mother. You don't want to that expression is that you don't want to take the trouble to look after your father or mother. Of course, it takes your energy, it takes your resources, it takes your time to look after them in all ways, yeah? And which you ought to do. So as you suffer him no more to do aught for his father or mother, and if you don't care, well, it's a very great error indeed. So therefore, thereby making the word of God of none effect through your tradition. So even though God has said, honor thy father and honor thy mother, till their end, till their lives end, you got to honor them and to care for them. And by your ways, by your practices, you have rendered this statement, or you have nullified this statement by not going through this operation. So making the word of God of none effect, because God had said, honor and take care of your parents, which you have, and many such like things you do, and many such similar things you do in life in the world. And when he had called all the people unto him, he said unto them, hearken unto me, every one of you, and understand. And Jesus called all the people around him and told them something listen to me carefully, for I'm going to tell you something very unusually interesting. And this we shall see in our next class, the coming Saturday. Om Tat Sat.